In Saigon, April 30, 1975. One family is standing outside a bank. They have their life savings. On paper, another family is boarding a boat. Their entire life's work is wrapped inside fabric, no bigger than a deck of playing cards. A legitimate ferry ticket, $20 per person. A smuggler's dinghy, $1,500 per person. A family of 6, $9,000. In foreign currency, with only 20 hours left, the doctor, who saved lives for 25 years, is on the boat. The family with the bank account, still waiting. Around 2 million Vietnamese crossed the South China Sea, using this exact protocol. This isn't fiction. This was a documented survival strategy. Let me tell you what nobody's saying out loud about precious metals. The real role of gold. Thesis shift. Gold isn't for buying bread during collapse, at checkpoints. It's not for trading cigarettes. It's for the moment when institutions fail, borders close, and you're forced to move your family across international boundaries while preserving your life savings intact. The autopsy is complete. The cause of death was always the same, and every survivor carried the same insurance policy. One of the most sophisticated escape systems in modern history was developed by the Vietnamese boat people, and it revolved around Cho Lan district. Incredibly thin sheets of pure gold, wrapped to reduce mass and compressed into stacks. This is the genius. At today's prices, a 1-ounce gold bar is worth about $4,350. That's 31 grams, visible, unmistakable, and immediately traceable to any border agent conducting a search. By contrast, gold leaf can be compressed into packets only slightly larger than a deck of playing cards, stacked paper thin, and wrapped in cloth. When discovered during searches, officials conducting cursory inspections may mistake them for aluminum foil. A Vietnamese refugee family could carry thousands of dollars in value in a package weighing almost nothing. When guards encountered what appeared to be thin metal sheets, they often assumed the item held little or no value. But when a recognizable gold bar was found, it was seized immediately. Here is the realization that changes everything. During the crisis, families didn't accumulate gold to spend. They accumulated it to cross borders during the crisis, and to rebuild once the crisis was over. Vienna, 1937. You are a Jewish banker, watching the events of the Anschluss unfold. In your hand is a certificate for a substantial Reichsmark deposit. Your coworker has 3 diamonds stitched into the lining of his coat. Can you guess which one of you makes it to Switzerland? In one of the most well-known examples, Oskar Schindler secured the release of thousands of Jewish laborers from concentration camps by offering black market goods, food, and jewels to SS commanders. These bribes worked because gold and diamonds retained purchasing power even during the systematic genocide carried out by the Nazi regime. The crucial detail is this: Nazi officials could not refuse these payments because they represented real value, value that could be immediately consumed or converted into money. A border guard could not be bribed with a certificate of deposit from a commercial bank. That paper either identified the holder as a target, or it was worthless. The same steps, the same pattern, the same result. Paper assets that depend on institutional validation evaporate the moment those institutions turn against you. Tangible assets, whose physical properties, elemental composition, density, and rarity, are universally recognized, retain value because they require no external authority. Let's look at the real cost of safe. In reality, moving through a war zone has a price. Syria, 2016. In just 18 months, over 500,000 Syrians arrived in Greece. The pricing structure was remarkably consistent. According to smugglers, a place in a dinghy from Turkey to Greece cost around €1,000 per person. What had once been a legal journey became an illegal one under the control of criminal networks. A legitimate boat ticket that previously cost €20 was transformed into a 5,000% markup. For a Syrian family of 4, this meant €4,000, months, or even years, of savings, simply to secure a safe crossing into Greece. Crucially, payment had to be made in euros or US dollars. Families were forced to convert Syrian local currency into foreign money that smugglers would accept. Ukraine, February 2022. Over 100,000 people fled within the first 24 hours after Russian tanks crossed the border at dawn. Banks halted electronic transactions. ATMs emptied within hours. Your account balance reads $30,000. In reality, you have nothing, only numbers on paper. One Ukrainian refugee escaped with a written seed phrase and Bitcoin stored on a USB stick. He managed to make $600 in Polish zloty by selling a portion to people he personally knew. in exchange for cash. There are very few documented cases of a refugee successfully using Bitcoin, and that case exposes the core weakness of the digital asset model. Bitcoin requires electricity to power devices, internet access to validate the blockchain, functioning exchanges to convert value, and technical knowledge to secure private keys. None of this is required for gold. The most revealing detail of the Ukrainian Bitcoin case is what happened next. The refugee did not continue living off Bitcoin in Poland. He immediately converted it into fiat currency. Even in the best-case scenario for cryptocurrencies, a tech-savvy refugee from a country with functioning crypto infrastructure treats digital assets as a temporary bridge, not as an end state. The goal is always the same: hard currency for travel, food, and shelter. The control case is Venezuela. Inflation reached over 2,000% by 2017 alone, after the bolivar collapsed from 6.4 per US dollar in late 2013 to over 3,000 per dollar by 2015. The bolivar lost over 95% of its purchasing power. The wealth of Venezuelans who stored value in local currency was annihilated. Those who held gold saw nominal value rise dramatically and were able to trade it in underground markets for US dollars at rates reflecting true international value. Click subscribe if you're realizing that everything you were taught about economic security is incomplete or outright wrong. I'm an independent financial historian. I conduct autopsies on fallen empires so you can recognize the pattern before it appears in your own backyard. Comment if you're preparing for what's coming, and tell me what you want me to analyze next. I read every single one. You don't survive a collapse with gold. You use gold to position yourself on the other side. Just right. Let's continue. Now let's examine what happens after you reach a safe country, because this is where most escape protocols fail. Under the U.S. Bank Secrecy Act, anyone entering or leaving the country with more than $10,000 in cash is required to file FinCEN Form 105. This is the legal asymmetry that explains why gold behaves differently from cash. The Bank Secrecy Act does not classify physical gold, bullion or bars, as money or as a monetary instrument. As a result, transporting $55,000 worth of gold across a U.S. border does not technically trigger a Form 105 filing. Transporting $10,001 in cash does. This is the trap. Gold is not classified as money, but it is still subject to customs declaration requirements. Customs enforcement authorities have the power to seize precious metals if they are not accurately declared. Failing to declare gold is not a violation of the Bank Secrecy Act, but it is a violation of customs law, and it can result in confiscation of the entire amount under civil asset forfeiture statutes. The process is unforgiving. When U.S. Customs seizes property, it issues a notice of seizure. You have 30 days to respond. For someone who has just escaped a war zone, without legal representation, without familiarity with U.S. legal procedures, and possibly without a stable address, this process is nearly impossible to navigate. It is your responsibility to prove that confiscated property is unrelated to illicit activity. Without access to bank records or formal documentation, someone fleeing a conflict zone, carrying gold accumulated over decades of work and saving, faces an almost impossible burden of proof. This is where theory collides with reality, and where most escape strategies collapse. So stay with me. At current market prices, a 1-ounce gold bar is worth approximately $4,350. For a refugee attempting to pay a border guard for passage costing $200 to $600, offering a full 1-ounce bar represents massive overpayment and introduces a new problem: making change. Without specialized equipment, a 1-ounce gold bar cannot be practically divided. If you offer a $4,350 bar for a $200 crossing, you have no realistic way to recover the remaining $4,350 in value, short of locating a jeweler to cut and melt the bar, which is implausible at a border crossing. This is why denomination matters. The optimal unit is fractional gold, specifically 1 gram, 5 gram, or 10 gram bars. At current prices, a 1 gram gold bar weighs 0.032 troy ounces and is valued at roughly $140, small enough to be used without negotiation, bargaining, or the need for change. A guard can quickly estimate the value of a 1 gram bar offered for passage. This structure provides two critical advantages. It limits catastrophic loss if a single piece is discovered and confiscated. It provides transaction-level granularity for real-world exchanges. This structure enables the intelligent distribution of wealth across different stages of escape. Early on, 1 gram bars are used for fuel. Directions: and short-term access. 5-gram and 10-gram bars are typically used in transactions with smugglers, while larger bars are reserved for final settlements once you reach the destination country. This is what the data reveals about why hard metals continue to function when authority collapses. Gold is a symbol of value that does not need to be explained, justified, or validated by any external institution. When a border guard is offered a piece of gold, its value is immediately understood. No systems, no databases, no institutional verification required. And during state collapse, precisely when escape protocols matter most, the institutional authority that certifies paper currency disappears. When a regime is losing a war, a guard serving that dictatorship will not accept its currency. The guard understands that the regime may collapse at any moment, rendering its money worthless. Gold exists outside politics. It is independent of governments, regimes, and ideologies. In the final stages of World War II, a Nazi official would refuse a bag of Reichsmarks, but might accept gold as a bribe, because gold retained value even as the regime disintegrated. My father served in Germany during both world wars. He used to say that if you wanted to bribe a guard, you needed gold or silver coins. When the government turns against you, that lesson reveals the true meaning of money. A guard's willingness to accept a bribe is driven by confidence in liquidity. Gold has a globally recognized price, set by international markets, and can be converted into cash in virtually any country, at almost any time. When you offer a guard a piece of gold, they understand that it can be taken to a bank or gold dealer and exchanged for cash within hours. For those who successfully reach a safe country and intend to retain accumulated gold without seizure, proper documentation becomes essential. Asset declaration at the border is a critical step. It creates friction and delays, but failing to declare almost always results in confiscation. Carrying invoices, receipts, and proof of purchase is the most effective legal defense. Assay reports and certificates of authenticity further strengthen your position. For someone who accumulated gold over decades before fleeing, complete documentation may be impossible to obtain. Even so, partial documentation significantly improves credibility. Once customs officers believe you attempted to conceal assets, that credibility is lost. Rather than attempting partial concealment, which is likely to be discovered, it is often more effective to declare all assets upon arrival and accept the resulting delays. Scrutiny and investigation. A more sophisticated approach is staged entry, crossing the border initially without attempting to import large quantities of precious metals, then importing them later through formal legal channels once residency is secured and legal counsel is available. This strategy reduces the risk of having all accumulated wealth seized at the very first border crossing. There are 5 components. 1. Begin accumulating fractional gold immediately, not 1-ounce bars, but 1 gram, 5 gram, and 10-gram denominations. Buy small amounts consistently over years, not large quantities all at once. 2. Distribute it across your body during transport, pockets, clothing linings, and a money belt. If one location is discovered, the entire reserve is not lost. 3. Assume a 10 to 30% loss due to theft, seizure, or bribery. Accumulate more than you believe you will need. 4. At the border of the destination country, declare all assets. Bring any documentation you have and consult a lawyer as soon as possible. 5. Understand what this is, and what it is not. This is insurance for the worst-case scenario. Not for buying bread during collapse, but for crossing borders when institutions fail, and for protecting accumulated life savings during regime change. Click subscribe if this forensic analysis challenged what you thought you knew about economic security. Your comments asking for practical survival resources, rather than abstract financial theory, inspired this analysis. If you're already preparing for what's coming, comment and tell me what you want me to examine next. Whether you will be affected is not the question. The question is whether you'll see it coming, or whether you'll be standing at a closed border, staring at a bank balance that shows $20,000 on paper, while the ATM is empty and the person beside you, carrying a deck of card-sized packet of gold leaf, is boarding the boat to safety. Recognizing patterns is not pessimism, it's preparation. The precedent is unambiguous and conclusive. Over 6 million Ukrainians, over 1 million Syrians, millions of Jewish refugees, around 2 million Vietnamese. The same asset class, the same protocol, the same result. Subscribe this channel.